There's a kind of loneliness no one warns you about. The kind that doesn't scream, doesn't claw at your chest. It just quietly slips into your bones until one day you realize you haven't heard your own laughter in years. That was me, Eleanor Hartley, 61 years old, a widow, a teacher, a ghost in her own life. I spent my days in the company of silence, a silence filled with the brittle echoes of memories, of music that once danced through this house, and a love that now only lived in the dust-covered photographs on my mantel. Evenings were worse. That's when the quiet became heavy, suffocating. I'd sit at my piano, fingers hovering over the keys, but the notes never came, not anymore, not since Daniel passed. And so when I heard the knock at my door, I almost didn't get up. I thought, maybe it's just the wind or a delivery left behind. But it came again, steady, measured, not frantic, not hesitant, a knock that felt deliberate, almost like an invitation. I stood, heart suddenly thudding harder than it should for something as simple as answering the door. And when I opened it, everything changed. He stood there, a stranger, tall, broad-shouldered, far too young to be standing on my porch. Yet somehow, he didn't look out of place, not entirely. Dark hair, blue eyes so vivid. They looked like someone had stolen a piece of the sky and tucked it behind his gaze. And when he smiled, it was the kind of smile you don't expect on a winter afternoon. Warm, disarming, dangerous. M.S. Hartley. His voice was deep, smooth, polished in a way that sent a ripple down my spine. Yes, I managed, steady, guarded. Can I help you? He drew in a breath, like he was rehearsing something then. I'm Liam Carter. I've heard about your reputation as a teacher, and I was hoping you'd consider giving me lessons for a second. I nearly laughed, not out of cruelty, but disbelief. I hadn't taken a new student in years, certainly not someone like him. Very selective, I replied, carefully. I usually only work with advanced students. I know. His lips curved into that maddeningly confident smile. But I think I might surprise you. There it was, arrogance, or maybe not. There was something beneath it, something raw, hungry. I let my gaze fall to his hands, large, strong, hands that belonged to a carpenter or a fighter, not a pianist. You don't even look like you play, I said, more to myself than to him. His chuckle was soft, almost self-conscious. That's because I don't, not yet. I should have closed the door, politely declined, walked back to my safe, predictable, empty world, but instead I stepped aside and whispered, "Come in." There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't come with screaming or crying. It just lingers soft, persistent, like a low hum beneath everything. You don't even notice it at first. You go through the motions. You make your tea, water the plants, sort the mail, answer no one. And then one day, you realize the silence has become a part of you. That's how it was for me. My name is Eleanor Hartley, 61, widow, once a concert pianist. Now just someone who used to be. The house was quiet, too quiet, even the piano, my grand old Steinway, sat there untouched, a beautiful, expensive, useless monument to what once was. I spent my afternoons staring at sheet music I no longer had the heart to play. And when I tried, the notes came out hollow, lifeless, like they didn't belong to me anymore. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon, when the knock came, not frantic, not hesitant, a calm, deliberate knock. For a moment I froze. People didn't knock on my door anymore. The mail came through the slot. Groceries were delivered. Friends, well, there were no friends left who visited. Another knock, same rhythm, same weight. I stood, unsure why my heart suddenly started racing. Maybe it's a mistake, someone lost a neighbor's package. When I opened the door, I wasn't prepared for him, tall, broad, a presence too large for my small porch, or maybe too large for the quiet world I'd built around myself. Dark hair, tousled, like it never quite listened to him. Eyes, startlingly blue, like summer skies right before a storm. A jawline sharp enough to cut glass, but softened by the way his lips curved into a smile that was devastating and entirely disarming. Ms. Hartley. His voice was deep, rich, a kind of warmth you don't expect from a stranger. Yes, my voice held steady, though something inside didn't. I'm Liam Carter. He hesitated, hands shoved into his jacket pockets, then squared his shoulders. I've heard about you, your teaching, and I was wondering if you'd consider taking me as a student. I blinked, stared. Not exactly open for new students, I said, trying to find my professional tone. I usually only teach advanced pianists. I know. His smile widened just a little, like he'd expected that answer. But I think I might surprise you. My gaze dropped, almost involuntarily, to his hands. They weren't pianist's hands, broad palms, fingers strong, blunt, rough around the edges, hands built for lifting, for holding, for anything but delicate arpeggios and subtle dynamics. You don't play, I said, realizing it as I spoke. Nope. His grin turned sheepish, almost boyish. Not a single note. I should have ended it there. Politely, kindly sent him on his way. But there was something in his eyes, something that wasn't arrogance, though it wore its mask, something deeper, hunger, not just to learn, but to become, to transform. And maybe that same hunger lived in me too. Come in, I heard myself say. Before reason could stop me, his smile softened, grateful. As he stepped inside, his presence seemed to fill the narrow hallway. The scent of rain clinging to his coat, the subtle warmth of someone, real, invading my carefully preserved solitude. I led him into the music room. The old Steinway sat beneath the window, dust motes floating in the weak sunlight, keys waiting for hands that hadn't touched them in far too long. Sit, I gestured to the piano bench, watching how his large frame folded awkwardly onto it, like he wasn't quite sure how to belong in this space. He glanced at the keys, then back at me, expression open, honest. What would you like to play? I asked. Though the question already felt rhetorical, Liam gave a crooked smile, lifted his hands. hovered them over the keys, then let them fall back into his lap. Honestly, I don't even know where middle C is. A laugh escaped me. Sharp, unexpected, almost foreign. I pressed a hand to my mouth, startled by the sound. Well, I murmured, sitting beside him. I guess we'll start there. The first lesson was exactly what I expected. Clumsy, awkward, frustrating. Liam sat at the piano, his large hands hovering over the keys, looking utterly out of place, like someone who'd wandered into the wrong room, the wrong life. His fingers stumbled, his wrists locked, notes fumbled out. Sharp, flat, often both. I showed him how to find middle C, how to build a simple major chord, how to position his fingers. Curved, relaxed, not stiff like claws trying to grab something just out of reach. He tried. God, how he tried. It was endearing. In a way I hadn't expected watching this. Mountain of a man, brow furrowed, biting his lip, squinting at the keys like they were written in a language he'd never seen. Relax your wrists, I murmured, gently pushing his hands down. You're holding tension. Here, I tapped his forearm. And here, he exhaled, rolled his shoulders, nodded, tried again. The chord sounded marginally better, still rough, but there was effort. I should have been annoyed, any other student, this unskilled, this unprepared. I would have turned them away politely after 1 hour. But there was something different about Liam, something that wasn't about talent, or even music, something I couldn't name yet. Between exercises, we talked, not much at first, simple things, where he was from. What he did, he was vague, but not suspiciously so. A freelance contractor, odd jobs, nothing specific. He spoke like someone who wasn't used to being asked personal questions. I didn't push, not yet. He asked me about music, not about theory, but about feeling. Why does this? He played a broken, shaky triad. Sound, happy, and why? When I shift this note, he moved it. Does it suddenly feel sad? It caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me that. Not like that, not my students, not even my colleagues. It's tension, I answered, slowly. Resolution, dissonance wants to resolve our ears, our hearts. Crave it just like life. His eyes softened, he nodded, like he understood, not the technical answer, but the truth inside it. Life's a lot of unresolved chords, he muttered, almost to himself. I glanced at him, startled by the quiet weight of those words. We continued. C major scale, then G, then D. His hands trembled less. His fingers missed keys, but less often. And every time he got something right, even something small, his face lit up with this boyish, radiant grin. It was infectious. And when he failed, which was often, he didn't sigh, he didn't groan, he just smiled, shook his head, and tried again. The hour stretched longer than it should have, not because of the lesson, but because neither of us seemed eager for it to end. You're patient, he said, packing up, standing, filling the room with his presence again. I chuckled softly. Not usually. You are an exception, he grinned. I'll take that as a compliment. Then, same time next week, There was a beat. I could have said no, should have, but instead, yes. Same time, his smile softened, something almost shy beneath it. Thank you. Eleanor, hearing my name in his voice, my first name, was unsettling, not because it was inappropriate, but because it sounded nice. I watched him leave, the door closed, silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence. Something had shifted, and I wasn't sure if that terrified me or thrilled me. The weeks passed, and what started as structured lessons began to unravel into something softer, looser, something neither of us named. But both of us felt. Liam showed up every week, always on time, always with that same determined glint in his eyes, the same crooked, boyish smile that somehow disarmed every piece of logic I had left. He wasn't improving fast, not in the technical sense. His fingers still stumbled, his hands, too large, too heavy, often struck two keys instead of one. But what he lacked in precision, he made up for in something far rarer: curiosity. He didn't just want to know how to play. He wanted to know why it mattered. One afternoon, as sunlight bled through the tall windows, he paused mid-scale, fingers resting, eyes scanning the sheet music as if it were some ancient text waiting to be decoded. Eleanor. His voice was softer than usual, contemplative. Why does Chopin sound like he's grieving? I blinked, the question hitting somewhere deeper than I expected. No one's ever asked me that, I murmured. He tilted his head, watching me, waiting. I swallowed, eyes tracing the faded ivory keys. Because when he wrote, he wasn't just writing notes. He was mourning for lost love, lost time, the things he knew he'd never hold again. Silence stretched, but it wasn't empty. It was full, heavy, pulsing with something neither of us could quite name. Liam nodded, slowly. Yeah, I think I get it. His gaze dropped to the piano, then back to me. You can feel it, can't you? The way everything just slips away. My throat tightened, something twisted, sharp, painful, but not unwelcome. It was the kind of ache that reminded you were still alive. I shifted, clearing my throat, trying to find something to anchor me. Let's move on, I said, voice brisk, sharper than I meant. Next piece. But the air between us, it had changed, thicker, warmer, edged with something electric, something dangerous. He didn't comment, didn't push, just gave me that look again. The one that peeled back every layer I'd spent years carefully sewing shut. When he smiled, it was softer this time, almost reverent, you know. His fingers brushed the keys, absent, thoughtful. You're an incredible teacher, not just because you show me how to play, but because you show me how to feel it. The words hit, sharper than they should have. A flush crept up my neck, heat blooming in places I hadn't felt warmth in years. I turned, pretending to sift through sheet music. It's nothing, I muttered, but even to my own ears, it sounded hollow. No, his voice lowered, steady, sure, it's not nothing. His gaze lingered, heavy, like a hand against my skin. You make me want to be better, not just at this. His hand tapped the keys lightly. At everything. The air trembled, or maybe it was just me. I focused too hard on the scattered pages, pretending my hands weren't shaking. It should have scared me. It should have made me draw a line, reinforce the boundaries I knew were blurring too quickly. But instead, something deep inside whispered, "Don't." And I didn't. It happened on an afternoon like any other, or at least, that's what I told myself. The air was crisp, sunlight filtering through the sheer curtains, casting patterns across the worn wood floor. Liam was struggling, again, with a transition in a piece that was clearly too advanced for where he was. But he insisted, stubborn, determined, his brow furrowed, lips pressed together, fingertips hesitating, then stumbling over the same set of notes for the third time. "Wait," I said, scooting closer. "You're locking your wrist again, look." I reached over, placing my hand lightly over his, guiding his fingers, pressing them down, just enough to show the weight, the angle, the flow, and that's when I felt it, not the resistance in his wrist, but the sudden, undeniable shift in the air between us. His hand, warm, steady beneath mine, his breath catching, just for a fraction of a second. I should have pulled back, should have laughed it off, redirected, corrected, anything. But I didn't. Instead, my eyes met his, and for a moment, everything else fell away. The room, the piano, the years that stretched between us, all of it. Gone. His gaze dipped, just slightly, to my mouth, a flicker, barely there, but enough to send my pulse crashing in my ears. My hand stayed, resting against his fingers turned, just slightly, until his palm cupped mine, not forcefully, not demanding, but as if asking, as if waiting for permission neither of us could voice. And God help me, I didn't stop it. Slowly, inevitably, we leaned in, like two magnets unable to resist. When our lips met, it wasn't fireworks. It wasn't some cinematic crash of passion. It was softer, slower, like the first note of a melody long forgotten, but instantly familiar. A tentative brush, a question, asked without words, but it deepened, almost without thought, like something dormant had been waiting, patient, just beneath the surface, for this exact moment to breathe again. His free hand lifted, cupping the side of my face, fingers trembling. Or maybe it was me who trembled. I couldn't tell. The kiss tasted like hesitation, like disbelief, like two people who knew exactly how reckless, how impossibly foolish this was, and didn't care. Not in that moment. I pulled back first, breath sharp, chest heaving, not from exertion, but from something far more dangerous. I shouldn't, I stammered, voice thin, barely mine. "We can't." But the words tangled, useless. Liam's eyes searched mine, steady, patient, a silent plea, a silent promise. He whispered, "Pull away." And God, I wanted to listen. Every fiber of me, every lonely, broken, hidden part wanted to listen. But instead, I stumbled back, hands shaking, turning away. We need a break." I choked out, barely audible. I need air." I rushed out of the room, hands pressed to my chest, heart pounding so loud it felt like it could break through bone. What the hell was I doing? What, in God's name, was I letting happen? And yet, as I stood in the hallway, fingers trembling, breath ragged, the only truth, the only terrible, inescapable truth, was that I didn't want it to stop. Not at all. The line had been crossed, and we both knew it. But neither of us spoke about it, not directly, not in words. Instead, it unfolded in the quiet moments, in the way our hands lingered, longer than necessary, over the keys, in the glances that lasted too long, in the tension that no longer felt like tension, but something warmer, heavier, inevitable. Our lessons, if they could still be called that, blurred into something else entirely. Liam still came every week, sometimes twice, sometimes with no real excuse other than, I had time, figured you wouldn't mind. And I didn't, God help me. I didn't. He'd arrive with that crooked smile, sometimes carrying coffee, sometimes flowers he claimed were on sale, always pretending it was casual, harmless. But the air shifted the moment he stepped inside. The piano, once my sanctuary, now felt like something entirely different. A witness, a conspirator, a silent accomplice to something neither of us dared name aloud. We still played, still practiced, but more often than not, we found ourselves sitting side by side, shoulders touching, conversations drifting from music to books, to memories, to confessions neither of us had ever shared with anyone. It was frightening. How easy it became, how natural, how right, and yet how absolutely reckless. I caught myself watching him more than I should. The way his brows furrowed in concentration, the curve of his smile when he finally mastered a chord, the subtle, unconscious way his knee brushed against mine, never quite pulling away. It should have made me uncomfortable, should have snapped me back into reality. But instead, it made me feel alive, terrifyingly, wonderfully. Alive one evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of violet and gold, he finished a shaky, but surprisingly tender, rendition of Clair de Lune. When the final note faded, silence bloomed, heavy, electric. Liam turned, met my gaze, and for a long, breathless moment, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached out, his hand finding mine, not grasping, not pulling, just holding. His thumb brushed over my knuckles, a touch so gentle it felt like it could unravel me completely. You know. His voice was low, rough around the edges, like he was afraid to speak too loud and shatter whatever fragile thing we'd built. I never thought. Someone like you. He trailed off, shook his head, laughed softly, almost bitter. It doesn't make sense, does it? I swallowed, my throat dry. No, it doesn't. But neither of us let go the first time it happened. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something either of us decided. It was simply inevitable, like a storm that had been gathering on the horizon for far too long, finally breaking. There are moments in life when time bends, folds, stretches into something unrecognizable, when seconds feel like hours, and yet pass in a blink, That's what it was when his lips found mine again. But this time, there was no hesitation, no questioning, only the quiet, undeniable certainty that we were both exactly where we were meant to be. The world outside faded. The years between us disappeared, the weight of everything we were. Everything we weren't dissolved into nothing. What remained was simple, raw, honest connection. It wasn't just a collision of bodies, but of souls, two lives, frayed at the edges, weaving themselves together in a tapestry neither of us ever expected to find. His presence was overwhelming, but not in the way that suffocated. It was consuming, like warmth spilling into every hollow place I'd learned to ignore. Every breath, every whispered name, every tremor of laughter tangled in something bigger, something sacred. There were no words, only the language of hands, of mouths, of hearts finally speaking without restraint. And when it was over, when the world slowly pieced itself back together, we stayed there, tangled in silence, in breath, in something that felt dangerously close to belonging. His arm tightened around me, his voice barely a whisper against my hair. I don't ever want this to end. Neither did I, but even then, buried beneath the warmth of him, of us, a whisper of reality lingered, a quiet, insistent echo. This cannot last. The weeks that followed felt surreal, a secret world built between two people who had no business wanting each other the way we did. The boundaries, once firm, once sacred, were now nothing more than faint lines drawn in the sand, already half erased by the tide. By day, we played music, scales, broken chords, simple melodies Liam fumbled through with stubborn persistence. His hands were still too big, too clumsy, but he never gave up. By evening, the piano sat silent, replaced by the sound of laughter, of whispered names, of breath tangled in the quiet hush of something neither of us dared fully name. But even inside that fragile bubble, reality, sharp and cold, began tapping at the edges. It started small. A glance from my neighbor held a second too long, the subtle, curious lift of an eyebrow when I answered the door with hair undone, lips maybe a little too red, a little too soft. Then little slips from Liam himself, moments where questions floated unanswered. Where exactly do you work? I asked once, voice light, pretending it was casual. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Here and there, projects, contract stuff. Vague, too vague. I didn't push, not then. But it stayed with me. There were other things. 2 phone calls he ignored, messages left unread in front of me, his jaw tightening, his eyes flickering with something he tried to mask, but didn't quite manage. And there was the way he sometimes stared out the window, like he was somewhere else entirely, far away, somewhere I couldn't follow. But every time doubt whispered, his hand would find mine, grounding me. His lips would press against my temple, soft, gentle, as if to remind me of the here and now, and I, foolishly, let it be enough. I told myself it didn't matter, that this, whatever this was was ours, ours alone. That what existed outside the walls of this house, outside the notes we played, the silences we shared, wasn't real. But the truth was, it was, and it was getting harder to ignore, even when Liam smiled, even when his fingers brushed against mine under the piano, sending sparks up my spine, even when his laughter filled this house that had been silent for far too long. The cracks were there, small at first, but growing. And some part of me, some deep, hidden part that had always known better, started to wonder. How long before everything we'd built, everything we pretended was safe, came crumbling down? How long before the truth walked right through my door? It was a knock that didn't belong, sharp, measured, unlike Liam's easy tap, or the gentle raps of a neighbor no. This was different. I knew it before I even opened the door, felt it, in the tight coil of dread unfurling in my chest. And when I pulled it open, there she was, a woman, about my age, immaculately dressed, sharp-lined suit, pearl earrings, hair pinned so perfectly it looked sculpted, not grown. But it wasn't the appearance that struck me first. It was the eyes, cold, calculating. Eleanor Hartley. Her tone was clipped, rehearsed, as though my name tasted unpleasant in her mouth. Yes, my voice stayed steady, but my fingers curled tighter around the doorknob. "Can I help you?" She offered a smile, tight, void of warmth. "I believe we need to have a conversation about Liam Carter." A name like a punch to the sternum. My heart stuttered. I'm sorry. I don't know what. Oh, let's not waste time pretending." Her eyes flicked past me, scanning the hallway, the house, the world I thought was safe. "I know about the two of you." Something inside me crumbled. A part I hadn't even realized was fragile. Until that moment, "I'm sorry." "Who are you?" "Margaret Sinclair," she said, with the precision of someone who'd introduced herself this way more times than she cared to count. "I've met Liam before many times, and I thought you deserved to know exactly who you've let into your life." My throat tightened, words tried to form, but none came. She reached into her bag, pulled out a small envelope, thin, but heavy in its meaning. "You should look at these." I didn't move, so she opened it for me. Photos, Liam, smiling, laughing, holding hands with another woman. A woman who looked terrifyingly like me. Another photo, Liam kissing someone's cheek, leaning close, whispering. Same smile, same warmth, different city, different woman. Another, and another, and another. My vision blurred, the edges of the world trembling, unraveling. "You're not the first, Eleanor," Margaret said softly. But there was no kindness in it, only exhaustion, resignation. "This is what he does. He finds women like us, alone, successful. He plays the part, makes you feel seen, wanted, alive." Her gaze pinned me, merciless. "And then, when he's gotten what he came for, he leaves money, favors, connections. Whatever he can take." I shook my head. Once, twice, desperate, frantic. No, you're wrong. He wouldn't." Her smile turned pitying. "Has he told you what he does for work, where he's from? Has he ever actually answered?" My hands trembled. I gripped the doorframe just to stay upright. Margaret sighed, tucked the photos back into the envelope, but not before dropping it into my palm. I'm sorry, I truly am, but you deserve to know. She turned, heels clicking against the pavement, leaving me frozen, shattered, hollow. The door closed behind her. The silence that followed wasn't like the silence I'd known before. This one was loud, crippling. A silence that screamed. I stood there, holding that envelope, as the walls around me, the walls I thought were safe, began to splinter. Everything, every smile, every touch, every whispered name. Was it all a lie, or worse? Was I the fool who believed it never could be? I don't remember walking back into the house. I don't remember sitting down. Only the way the envelope felt in my hands, heavier than anything should ever be. The photos spilled onto the coffee table, proof, cold, undeniable proof. And with every image, something inside me broke. All those moments, the way he looked at me, the way his fingers traced mine, as if I were something precious, as if I were real, as if I were seen. Had it all been rehearsed, a script, written long before he ever knocked on my door? I sat there, staring, until the daylight faded into something darker, colder. And when the sound of his car pulling into the driveway echoed against the windows, my body reacted before my mind did. I stood, gripping the edges of the table, breath shallow, heart hammering so loud I thought it might shatter straight through my ribs. The door opened. His voice, casual, unknowing, floated in. Eleanor, I don't. My voice was sharp, sharper than I'd ever heard it. His footsteps faltered. What's wrong? I turned slowly, letting him see it, letting him see the wreckage he'd made of me. I pointed to the photos. Is it true? For a second, his face stayed blank, empty, and then, slowly, his jaw tensed, his shoulders set, his hands clenched at his sides. Eleanor, his voice softened. I can explain. Explain. My laugh broke, splintered, ugly. Explain what? That you've done this before, that this, all of this, was some game to you. His eyes darkened. It was. The words came fast. Not this, I swear to God. Not this, not you. Don't. My hands trembled. Lie to me now. He took a step forward, then stopped, like he wasn't sure if crossing the distance would fix it or ruin it forever. When I came here, yeah, I was looking for something, someone. His voice shook. It started like it always does. I thought, maybe I could. I don't know, use you, use this like I've done before. My breath caught, my body swayed. But his voice broke. But then it wasn't a game. It wasn't a con. You were different. Stop. I shook my head, tears stinging, blurring everything. Don't stand there and tell me this meant something. Don't you dare. It did. He stepped forward, desperate, hands out like he could catch the pieces before they shattered completely. Eleanor, God, I didn't expect this. I didn't expect you. I didn't expect to care. The words cut deeper than any blade. I turned away, hands over my mouth, trying to breathe, trying to stop the sob that clawed its way up my throat. I trusted you. My voice trembled, fragile, broken. I let you in. I let you see me, the real me, the parts no one's seen in years. I know. His voice cracked. I know. And I ruined it. I ruined everything. But it wasn't fake, not what happened between us. Get out, the words came, barely more than a whisper, but heavy, final, Eleanor. Get out, silence, a silence thick enough to drown in. And then, his footsteps, slow, heavy, each one driving a nail straight through my chest. The door opened, the door closed, and the world collapsed. I fell to my knees, hands gripping the empty air. The echo of him still warm in the room. A sob tore free, raw, helpless, the kind of sound you never expect to make, until the moment it owns you completely. Everything I thought I knew. Gone. I was a fool, worse. I was a woman who believed, for one brief, shining moment, that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to be loved. And now, all that remained was the silence. The days blurred, sleep became a stranger food. Tasteless, the house, once filled with the hum of music, now felt heavier than ever. Silence wasn't just silence anymore. It was a presence, a weight, a mirror reflecting everything I didn't want to face. I tried to play, sat at the piano, let my fingers hover over the keys, but they wouldn't move, wouldn't dare, as if the music itself had betrayed me, abandoned me. Just like him, the worst part wasn't the anger, it was the ache, the unbearable, suffocating ache of missing someone. Even when every logical part of you screamed not to, I told myself, over and over, that I should hate him, that I did hate him. But hate doesn't erase the shape someone leaves behind. It doesn't empty the space where their laughter used to echo, or where their fingers used to brush yours, like a secret meant only for you then. One evening, my phone buzzed his name for a moment. My breath caught, my thumb hovered, trembling. Over the screen, part of me wanted to delete it, pretend it wasn't there, pretend he wasn't there. But my heart, stupid, traitorous, tapped it open. Eleanor, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I wouldn't blame you if you never replied. But I needed to send you this. I needed you to hear it. It's the only way I know how to say. I'm sorry. There was a link, a video. I hesitated, stared, fingers shaking then. Against every shred of better judgment, I pressed play. The screen flickered. And there he was, Liam, sitting at a piano, his hair messier than usual, face pale, drawn, like someone who hadn't slept in days. He didn't speak, didn't look at the camera, he just played. The first note trembled, delicate, haunting, Rachmaninoff's vocalese. A piece with no words, no lyrics, only sound, only ache. His hands, those same hands that once stumbled over simple chords, now moved with a grace I hadn't seen before. Not perfect, no, far from perfect, but filled with something far more powerful than precision, rawness, honesty. The melody wrapped around me, pulled me under, dragged me through every memory, every touch, every whispered name. It wasn't just music. It was him. It was everything he couldn't say, everything we never got right. Each note was an apology, each pause, a breath he couldn't take, each rise and fall, a confession of everything he was and everything he wasn't. By the time the final chord faded, I realized I was crying, not the kind of tears that come from anger, but the kind that come when something inside you breaks, and maybe, just maybe, begins to heal. I stared at the screen at him, frozen, breathless for a long time. I didn't move then, without even thinking. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and I typed, "It's beautiful. The music, thank you." I stared at the message. Hovered, should I send it? Should I let this door, this broken, fragile door, open even a crack before I could talk myself out of it? My thumb hit send. A moment later, 3 dots blinked, then his reply. "It's the least I could do, you. You gave me something no one else ever has. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I ruined everything. But I needed you to know. You changed me, Eleanor, you really did." I pressed a hand to my mouth, breath hitching. And as the tears fell, I realized, maybe, not everything was a lie, maybe. Some parts of it were real, and maybe that was enough. For a long time, I sat there, staring at that last message, fingers trembling, breath uneven. A part of me wanted to reply, to say more, to ask him why. How, if any of it had ever really been real. But the truth was, I already knew the answer. It was both. It was real, and it was a lie. It was love, and it was betrayal. It was everything. Tangled, messy, complicated, devastatingly human. My fingers hovered one last time over the screen, and I typed, "You hurt me more than I knew was possible. But I also believe, in some way, you loved me, and maybe that's enough. I forgive you, Liam, but please, don't reach out again." I hit send. No reply came. And for the first time, I was okay with that. I powered off the phone, set it aside, let the quiet settle, not like before, not like the heavy, suffocating kind, but something softer, something freeing. My gaze drifted toward the piano for a long while. I just sat, watching, listening to the silence. Then, slowly, I stood, walked over. Fingers brushed over the keys. Tentative, unsure, I sat down, let my hands hover, waiting for the ache, for the hesitation, for the doubt. But it didn't come. Instead, what came was a note, soft, trembling, fragile, then another, and another, until the melody built, growing, rising, threading itself into something whole, something honest, not perfect, but real. A song not about him, not about us, but about me, about the woman who learned that letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean erasing. It means choosing yourself. It means remembering that sometimes the most beautiful songs are written from broken notes. And as the last chord faded into the air, I smiled, not with sadness, but with peace.